open?
Yeah.
Close.
When you don't want to speak. Ah, right, okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for your patience and us getting all set up and getting the technical difficulties sorted. So just so you make sure you're at the right panel, this one is called Can We All Just Agree to Stop Doing Television for the Internet? How about now? We're at the panel, which is called Can We All Agree to Stop Doing Television for the Internet? We have a really interesting collection of people here to give their takes on that. The format is going to be each one of them is going to come up and do a little bit of a talk about how they're experiencing that for about 10 minutes, and then we'll open it up to questions. So first up is Ezra Dogramasi. Sorry, Ezra. I want to get your title right. So your title just says Deutsche Welle. Can you remind us what your title is? Ezra. So this is the senior editor for digital at Deutsche Welle. She's got some really cool stuff to show you guys, so come on up.
This one. Okay, that's all right. That's okay. Hi, everybody. I just want to start off with a video that some of you guys may or may not have seen, so let's take a look.
At this point in time, nobody can beat Simone Biles. I've seen some of my guy friends try it, but they never land it, so they get really upset.
Simone doesn't require a lot of run into her tumbling skills, so she can fit a longer pass onto the floor than a lot of athletes. She adds the jump afterward, which is a simple skill, but it adds to bonus.
Normally, the separations between first and second place could be 3/10 or 5/10, and she goes out and wins by 1 or 2 points. This is a tumbling pass that you would see on the floor, and she does it on 4 inches wide. It's also the hardest dismount in the world, and I'm the only one that does it.
I would say it's probably no more than 3 days that it takes her to achieve a new skill. Many athletes, it takes them years.
I would say Simone is definitely competing against herself at this point. Nobody has even been able to come close to her.
Okay, so had anybody seen that before? Yeah, okay, so there were 57 million views of this video on the New York Times Facebook page. They published this before the Olympics, they repeated again during the Olympics, and it's had a ridiculous number of shares, something like 54,000 shares. And the reason that I wanted to start off with this video is, first of all, you'll notice it's from the New York Times. So the New York Times is not a broadcaster, it's a newspaper. But what they seem to have done quite well is very carefully selected digital projects with beautiful execution. Now, this video kind of breaks all the rules that those of us who work in digital and as broadcasters know about the industry. We've been told that things should be square, so 4x4, 60 to 90 seconds long, according to NewsWhip. This video is, as you can see, 16 by 9. They don't have cookie cutter templates across any of the text, and you have to engage with the sound, and people did engage with the sound. And I wanted to show that kind of as an introduction to what I'm going to be talking about. And so if you'd like to follow along with this presentation, it's available on SlideShare. If you just Google my name on SlideShare and 10 things I learned about social video, this is it. And we have a little child on stage, which is great too. So, yeah. Actually, this is my presentation right here. So, okay, so some of you might have seen various iterations of this. Before I joined Deutsche Welle about 5-6 months ago, I was at the BBC and I was at Al Jazeera before that. I've been working in the digital space for probably about 7 years in broadcast and another few years before that in international landscape. I originally did this talk at Google Newsgeist last year, and then since then, many people have asked for it. So I just want to kind of whiz through these slides very quickly and tell you the things that my team, when I was at the BBC, we learned about social video, but I think they're still true today. So again, this is not a talk about best practice, so I'm not going to tell you that your videos should be a certain format, but what it is a talk about are digital people who are working in the digital world and a little bit frustrated because traditional people are not really necessarily listening to them. And if anybody can understand this reference, I'll buy you an espresso or something like that. No? Nobody gets it? One person gets it. Okay, good. Okay, so these are some of the people who I talked to when I was originally putting this presentation together. They include people from the BBC and also from Al Jazeera. I think it's a really good thing to speak to competitors because we're not actually really competing with each other. Everybody has their own patch. And the first thing is it's not TV. So if you really want to go and start making social video, you need to have people who are native to this landscape. And so that doesn't mean people who have grown up, like being on Facebook or being on Twitter, but people who understand these platforms and then can take strategic decisions and act on those decisions as well. We have a child approaching closer. Okay, so, hello. So if you are site-based, it's going to be very difficult to convince people that video really matters. Yeah, get it? Okay, so a lot of people say that the social audience is promiscuous. So what do we mean by that? Well, I'll go back. So what we mean by that is you see people coming from a social audience going on site, they'll check one story or they'll check one article and then they'll leave. And that's because you don't really want to leave the platform that you're on. I mean, I think I'm speaking to the choir here. If you're on Facebook, you want to stay on Facebook. You don't want to go and have a really bad off-site experience and then stay there. And also, with the amount of investment and the literacy in these companies like Facebook, Google, YouTube, Twitter, etc., they're moving at a much faster pace than traditional media organizations, and they're able to do a lot more. So the next step is if everyone is doing it, it doesn't mean that you should too. So in other words, don't try to be BuzzFeed. So there was a trend last year where everybody was doing food videos. I was like, okay, we know how to make pasta now. Can we move along? So, and I think as, publishers, we have to ask ourselves, what is the thing that we're really, really good at? And again, a reference to the New York Times is the New York Times will come out with these very well thought through digital strategies and they know exactly what they're going to do. Okay, well, what about the big publishers? Do we know what we stand for? Are we chasing breaking news? Are we trying to do feature? Are we just going to be doing Facebook Live? What is it? If anyone's like, you're bored of my talk, just watch the baby in the front. Okay, and also to skip the obvious. So again, with the food example, everybody was doing food and everybody's doing it in the same way. A lot of you might be familiar with the Reuters report that came out last year looking at video, in which it said that there's this massive oversaturation of video. And you saw a lot of broadcasters just basically having this template, pumping out video as if it was on a treadmill with captions on the bottom, not really engaging. So, you know, why would your audience want to go there? And Carol Alona, who is now the video editor for Mundo's at the BBC or America section, was saying, unless you're cooking drugs or doing something that is exciting, don't do it. You've got to give your videos love. So I think with the Simone Biles video, you saw that there was really investment into doing something beautiful and doing something well. And that's why it worked. But too often, I think it starts even from the hiring decisions. When you're starting up a new video project, are you just hiring people who are looking for a job? Are you looking for people who are so passionate about this and they have these amazing ideas too? That's where it begins. And each video you need to be optimizing for different platforms. And again, with my digital colleagues, I think that we know this, but it's amazing when you talk to various people and they think, oh, I've got a TV package, let's just stick it on Facebook, let's just stick it on YouTube and it's going to work. And again, Mariam Ganbarzadeh, who is from BBC Persian, she's doing other things now, had said, if you're not interested in it, if you don't love it, your audience is not going to love it either. In an earlier session today, actually in this room, Kito mentioned fear. And we see that there is still a lot of fear. So it's fear of the technology. People are like, I don't need to learn Chartbeat. What is this social flow, etc. There's fear of being different, which is really difficult. If you're a digital person in a traditional newsroom, you're surrounded by the people who don't think the same way as you do. So you might feel ostracized. And, you know, if you're a disruptor like me, you just got to push through and make it happen. Hello. I just want to pick her up and wave to everybody. Okay, there's a fear of breaking the rules. There's a fear of experimenting. And again, a fear of talking to competitors. Don't be afraid to talk to your competitors. And then always experiment. So something that we tried to do, and again, I'd love to get this going where I am right now, is to take a leaf out of Google's cap and have 20% days, where let's say we have a Friday, we're not giving ourselves the pressure to publish, but instead to be trying new things. Can we be trying new apps that come out? Can we be collaborating with different news organizations? And again, without taking the pressure to publish, but just going into the kitchen and cooking up some magic, throwing some ingredients together and seeing what happens. This is what really astonishes me most. Recently, I did an interview for the Global Editors Network where I talk a little bit more in detail about this. But I'm still kind of stunned at how people don't care about data and how data and analytics is not embedded into the newsroom. Either people are being told the wrong metrics or they're being told these inflated metrics which don't mean a thing. And we can talk about that in discussion. And in saying that, there's no magic numbers. So Newswhip will say that the best type of Facebook video is 60 to 90 seconds, but the Simone Biles video is 3 minutes 22. It's still journalism at the end of the day, so video is just a different format. You're still applying your journalism schools. And then also I find that, okay, I'm going to get some people upset here, but oh well. I find that a lot of people working in digital really don't have any idea what they're doing. And it's usually like, sorry, white middle-aged men, this is not supposed, it's not personal, but usually you'll find a lot of kind of senior male newsroom types have come over from the newspaper industry, and they teach social media, they see social media as advertising back to the website. But again, for people like me who've kind of semi-grown up with this, and then the next generation coming through, this is not advertising for any other platform. These are the platforms that we kind of live and breathe and communicate on. And yeah, I think if you're not kind of breaking the rules and creating trouble, you're not doing much. Okay, so what do we do? Well, these are kind of a few resources that I think are very useful. One is this book by Hugh MacLeod called Ignore Everybody. And if you look at the Venn diagram, I don't know if you can see that in the back, but I'll never take Venn diagrams seriously again after seeing this. Can you see that? Yeah, anyway, that's funny. Okay, and then these two books as well, Linchpin by Seth Godin, and of course How Google Works. And what Seth Godin, which some of you might know, what he talks about is the industrial mentality that we're still operating with, even in newsrooms today, is this very, very outdated model where people are waiting to be told what to do. That doesn't make you indispensable. There's always going to be somebody moving up through the ranks who's going to be able to do this stuff better than you can. So what is it that you as an organization and you as an individual are going to do to distinguish yourself from the competition and to be relevant? So basically, if you don't iterate, if you don't evolve, if you don't change, there are plenty of other media publishers or organizations happy to be taking your place. So that's it.
I realized that I introduced the panel, but I didn't introduce myself. So before I bring up the next panelist to share what he has to say, I thought it'd be worth introducing who I am and what I'm doing here, chairing the panel. So my name's Garrett Goodman. I work for a company called Watch It. We're a video creation platform. And I run the partnerships team for Europe, so it means that I get to see inside the video operations of all these top publishers that we work with. One of the publishers that we have the pleasure of working with is International Business Times, where John Crowley works. John Crowley is the editor-in-chief of International Business Times, so he's going to share much broader than just how they use Watch It about what they're doing in video and how it's a lot less like traditional television than, well, maybe what you were doing previously when you were at the Wall Street Journal. So please come on up.
So thank you, Garrett. Hello, everyone. Yes, as Garrett said, I'm the editor-in-chief of the International Business Times UK. I've been there for a year. Prior to that, I was the digital editor for the Wall Street Journal in Europe for 5 years. So IBT, we're a digital-first news organisation which reaches an audience of about 55 million people globally, and clearly, you know, video, like everything else, is something that we want to dominate. Going back to my time at WSJ 3 or 4 years ago, what we used to do at noon every day was do a segment saying, here is the news. It was very TV-esque. It was a man or a woman in a suit behind a lectern, pretty much like this, saying, hello, this is the news. And it was so TV, it was unbelievable. And it didn't work. And you fast forward that to 2 weeks ago, the man on the right is another gentleman, but this man was, we were interviewing him as part of a Facebook Live in the immediate aftermath of the Westminster attack. So we're going to play that video now. Give that a whirl. It is not working.
Hello, Ian Silbeira here for IB Times outside the Palace of Westminster and Westminster Bridge, where there has been a suspected terror attack. There are reportedly 12 people injured. Details are still coming in as to the scale. Go around. Okay, get a better look.
All of a sudden, I just hear these 3 shots down, bang, bang, bang. It's like it's quite, I don't know, 5 feet, 10 feet away. So, and then people started running. I was like, what's happening? I just go over there. I could see that there was a car smashed to the ground in Parliament.
What we heard going through Portcullis, of course, the bells were going for the division bell. But what we heard was one or two bands from outside. Actually, from the inside of the building, weren't quite sure what that was.
Yes.
But security services are very quick to say you need to move to a safe place.
Yeah.
And that's obviously what we proceeded to do next.
We're still waiting to hear more reports on this. As we can see, a big, heavy police presence going on. And we are just going to call through here. You can see here the world's media is over here. Just looking up. This is as far as we can get. We were pushed back earlier. We've spoken to 3 different witnesses already. We're, of course, running a live blog on ibtimes.co.uk. For all your news, check that out now. We're still waiting for official confirmation of this all, and we will update you as it goes.
So that Facebook Live was done an hour after the attack. So, you know, information was still sketchy, but people were desperately trying to find out what was going on. And what's interesting for me, you know, when I was at the Wall Street Journal, if something like that would have happened, we'd have sent somebody down with a notebook and pen to, you know, to cover it as an online news site. We armed Ian, our reporter there. He had an iPhone, he had an iRig mic, which cost £60, and what crucially is important as well is to have a Wi-Fi hotspot or router to be able to, because we've done Facebook Lives before where that hasn't worked and it's fallen over because of 4G. And you can apply this to broadcast as well. You know, you think of a sat-nav truck, you think of producers, you think of people going down. So it's an incredibly flexible thing for you to do. What we were able to do with the Facebook Live as well was to repackage those videos as well and put them online through our player, I should say, afterwards. And it's very agile. So you have a phone, you don't have a camera at all. You can kind of move about really easily. And certainly for us, it's had the biggest single transformative impact on video over the last year while I've been at IBT. A couple of other points that came out of that, which I wanted to show. First of all, you know, reach is great, and this is kind of perhaps one of the subjects that we're going to talk about in the discussion, but, you know, how do you monetize these things? So as you could see, we were trying to push people back to the site, you're trying to push back links and so forth, but, you know, that can be a false economy as well. You know, the main thing that we wanted to do was to get out the news, but I think it isn't really even an elephant in the room, so to speak. It's a big issue. It's like lots of people are trying to do Facebook Lives, lots of people are getting reach, you know, engagement is open for discussion, but the thing you're doing, you're putting resources into it. How do you monetize that? So our video desk, we have a team of 8 people, which when I joined was very top down, and it was very much video was thought as an adjunct and an afterthought. Sometimes they wouldn't even go into the meeting. We'd come out and we'd tell them what they were going to be doing, and I changed that. They came into the meeting now. And they play much of a kind of an integral role within the newsroom, because as people's consumer habits are changing, we need to put video front and center. So this video that I'm going to show you now, it was actually not done by our video team. It's done by a member of the newsroom, and that's been one of the things that I've been trying to introduce. I think, you know, in 5 years' time, you potentially will have newsrooms, online newsrooms, where everyone will be expected to at least edit or create a video. This video was done, I should say, full disclosure, on Watch It. There are obviously other channels to do this, but it's a very simple social video which was done to mark the International Transgender Day of Visibility. So that video took around 20 to 30 minutes to put together on Watch It, and that ability to turn around social video extremely quickly has had another transformative impact on our newsroom as well. Other video tools, which was kind of clunky, took a lot of time and training to use, were within the aegis of the video team. But now what I want to see from our newsroom is people within the newsroom doing that video. The person who did that is our new features and trending editor. So she's not only kind of news gathering on social, she's actually putting content together as well. 360 video, we're looking into new formats as well. We've just published today a story going through, in which we go through 3 French towns, speaking to French people about the elections that are coming up in about 3 weeks' time. This is a 360 video that we did with a former National Front candidate who explained her kind of journey from the far right to the left. Let me try and publish this. It's not working. Okay, I've gone back to the start. Let's flick through this. Time is... We'll move on from that, as I can't seem to get it to play, unfortunately. One other thing that we should learn from TV as well is that, the discussion is about, can we just agree to stop doing TV? But of course, what TV has done as well is, set ethics and kind of boundaries. And one of the big things that we have a problem with online is trying to verify video. So IBT has worked together with First Draft as part of its cross-check foundation on the French election as well, in which we've been part of a team of 37 news organisations verifying video too. And this video itself was one that was, again, I think there's a problem here with this being published, but I'll try and describe it to you. Was an anti-racism, a so-called anti-racism site, was saying white people were attacking French people in hospitals, and this had been shared 30,000 times on Facebook. And what we were able to do with people from First Draft and Crosscheck who were working within our office was to actually knock this down. And funny enough, this had been overdubbed in French, and a person who's working on a social media team had said the same had been done in Spanish as well. So it's important not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So it's not that we're turning our backs on TV. We need to kind of go and embrace new formats. What we have to realize as well is that we need to remember the standards that TV upholds, and online there is that rush to kind of get everything out to kind of break news. But we need to think about TV standards as well. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. So next up we have Natalie Mlinerich from the BBC, mobile editor at the BBC. Yeah? You need to connect, and you have a...
Shall I get my own?
I'll grab mine.
I'm using the HDMI. I don't need audio. You can do that. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
What's this? It's this side. Hope you guys are saving some questions. There are kind of four topics we're going to look at in the discussion itself. One of them, and if you read the description, you'll get an idea of where we're looking to take this. And I'll save that as a teaser for the discussion.
Okay, thank you. No? Nothing? sorry. So it should be set up for...
So one of the things you'll have noticed from the first two presentations is there's this kind of recurring theme of different team structures, different people being involved in creating video. And that's one of the things that I've noticed is really different from a television style operation, is that you tend to have these highly skilled experts doing video, whereas what we've heard from John and also what we've heard from Ezra is that there are people who are living and breathing social, who aren't necessarily, from the traditional broadcast background, although many of them are as well. And also in John's case at the IB Times, regular editors who are getting involved in creating video. And not only does that inject some different angles and different approaches to actually how you format that video, you also end up getting different voices. And I think that that's one of the things that's really interesting about the way that video is being done now, for social in particular, is that you have people who really know how to speak social, who are being empowered to do video, who are speaking in a different way. And that video comes out performing so much better and resonating so much better, because the way that you put a package together and tease out a subject throughout that package traditionally for television just doesn't seem to engage when we look at social audiences. So that's one of the things that I think is worth highlighting, is that the team structure is really different.
Should we go to Andrea first?
Sure. So next up we have Andrea Iannuzzi from Gruppo L'Espresso, who runs the Visual Lab.
Okay. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My team a couple of months ago didn't exist, so we are just in the beginning of our experience at Gruppo L'Espresso. We are hacking the newsroom, trying to find a way to do the right stuff. My team is it's called Digital and Visual Lab, so we are trying to do different kind of things, just like infographics, interactive videos, data visualization, so different kind of things. Before joining Digital Lab, I used to work with local papers, so I know what it means to work with little resources and no money, no video producers, only journalists and people willing to do their best. What I learned in the last 2 years is that you can do things and have good results even if you are a little team and without specialization. You get to focus on good ideas, find the right tools to help you, and don't be afraid to try and fail. Now, because it's better to show and don't tell, I try to show something that we are doing in different ways and different formats for social and other stuff of videos. The first is one of our first videos made especially for the Instagram platform is a squared video, and it played well, and it's about when the actress Emma Watson had some problems with a picture. It's in Italian.
passion is the belief that men and women should have equal rights and opportunities.
The second video is a vertical video, and it's a format that we are trying to experiment for mobile.
Sampi, un caffettino con la moka? Un classico?
This is pre-roll.
I grandi classici.
Quelle cassette piccole che raccontano le storie o della musica che c'erano una volta. Penso musica sia.
Questa
Young people who don't know what audio tapes are.
8 mm. Una delle classiche cassette che si usano negli sterei vecchi, diciamo. Una decina, non so.
Non credo siano singoli. Forse... no, sì invece. No, sì. Ci ho ripensato. Una canzone solamente.
Un paio. Filmato. Una decina, 12. Non lo so, forse una ventina. Una volta avevo visto, mi pare da qualche parte che serviva per... forse mi sbaglio, per togliere il filo all'interno. Qualcosa all'interno, non lo so. Arrotolarlo, lo stesso principio del bianchetto, ci stanno i buchi e tu infili la penna e poi farlo ricominciare da capo.
Beh, la posso inserire dietro per sfilare, diciamo, la pellicola, diciamo, non so di preciso come si chiama.
Ah, per riavvolgere il nastro, cioè mi sembra...
Okay, the last example. We skip food. This is not a video. This is a feature that we tried to. Okay, this is a feature that we tried to put together to put together different videos of the same topic, and this is what we can show to say that video are not television anymore, because here you can have different kind of videos. You can see the different thumb of the videos, and you have here you have the text, and so this is a visualization for a topic that will work well with La Repubblica. So what can I say? The important thing with videos with online videos is that you can do good stuff without having great teams behind. And so what I would say to you is to try, fail, and try again.
Let's see if we have better luck this time. Yeah. Right. So I decided to state the absolutely obvious. We all know that's why we're here, but it's still something that's discussed a lot in newsrooms, and I think a lot of us still spend a lot of time being quite shouty about it and quite annoying. So at the BBC, about 18 months ago, we had been discussing video for the web for years and years and years. But 18 months ago, we said, what does it mean to make video for mobile? Just take it a step further. And so we really started asking ourselves questions, and this is not working. Oh. So how is it really different to the old model of TV? And so we posed ourselves a number of questions and challenges. I think this is on a bit of a delay. Here we are. So one of them is, do people actually flip their phones? There wasn't much research on this. There was a bit of research. Most of it was anecdotal. We kind of assumed that people would flip their phones for something long, documentary, something really immersive, but maybe not for the kind of very short news clips. Do people use audio? We'd seen from Facebook, everything's subtitled, people don't bother with headphones. Time of day. I'm assuming most people have very similar peaks when it comes to mobile usage for news, so you have a very big influx of traffic in the morning, smaller one at lunchtime, and then very big in the evening. So how do you give people content that works for those times of day? The agenda. Is the mobile audience actually the same as your TV audience or your web audience? And finally, what kind of storytelling actually works on a different device? And we came up with something we now call Videos of the Day, and it has had about 10 names in between. But basically, I'll just give you a quick summary of what it is for those who haven't seen it. It lives in our app. And if this works, it should give you an idea. So essentially, it's a collection of videos. You can swipe through them. It's updated throughout the day. But the idea is it's pretty easy to complete. You get, at the moment, we're doing 7 stories, that we've varied the number a few times. And you should be informed of the latest news, but you should also get some other things. So it's got news, it's got features, it's got explainers, it's got quite a lot of personal first-person stories. So, as you can see from that, what we decided to do is we went for everything being vertical. We had initially thought we were going to do a mixed model, but we just decided people won't flip, let them have a kind of much more immersive personal relationship with their phone, make it all vertical, all subtitled, so they don't have to listen to the audio. We also did quite a lot of work on working out what people wanted at different times of day. So I think this is still very much work in progress, to be honest, but what we do have is every morning we offer people a summary of what's coming ahead in the day, what to look for. It's a really quick roundup. It's probably 40 seconds, but I think it's enough to leave people informed and actually doesn't take too much of their day very early on. We've kind of had a lot of success, I think, with weekend things where we know people have more time. So every Saturday we give people in case you missed it, like if you've just been watching Trump news, here's everything else that happened. And we find that's actually, it surprises how popular that is. And other things like, round up of more positive news. And, you're in weekend mode. You don't just want, tragedy. And the third thing we did was we looked at the agenda, and we're pretty traditional most of the time, and we still want to do the big news and the serious news, but we also want to broaden out a bit and look at things that traditionally the BBC maybe doesn't do too much, or certainly wouldn't do on its main bulletins. But the biggest piece of work we did was around storytelling, and I think it's probably the most important work. And we put together a team, a dedicated team to make this video, and they, for reasons slightly beyond their control, had about 6 months to play with it as opposed to the 2 months we thought they'd have. But in the end, I think it was really useful because actually we ditched most of what we started with. And the reason for that is it just didn't quite work, and the tone wasn't right, and the pace wasn't right, and it wasn't quite visual enough. And, was it the right kind of stories? And actually what we found experimenting was that we needed a voice, and that is quite a hard thing to do from scratch. A voice that felt BBC, but at the same time was different to TV, was different to the rest of the stuff on the web. So we did a lot of work on that, and I just want to show you a couple of examples of what we came up with. So this is kind of more about trying to be a bit more playful and a bit, having a bit more fun with news. And that, as you can imagine, was quite popular. It was also done by a 19-year-old who just, did it. We said, see what you can do, see what you come up with. And within 3 hours, he came up with that, which we were all very impressed. He just thought it was quite easy. And this example is quite interesting because I think this is a piece of journalism. This is investigative journalism. It's a BBC piece that was in the works for maybe a year. It was an investigation into animal smuggling in Africa. And what often happens with us is that we have these big pieces of journalism, fantastic journalism, but they are made for TV, and the reporters who go out to do it are thinking of TV. So they came back with tons of material and said, what can you do with it? So we started talking to them and how they'd done this investigation, what were the steps, and it turns out that a lot of it was done on WhatsApp, and a lot of it was kind of phone chats. So this is the version we made for mobile.
Ibrahim. Okay.
So this goes on for about 4 minutes. It gives you a really good idea of what's happening, and then I always get thrown by that.
Hi, I've been working
and
on
then
this
there was a
investigation
follow-up
for the
piece
past
the
year,
following
and
day
I'll guide
on
you
other
through
aspects
the
of the
next
investigation.
steps. So
But
you've just been
it
offered
took
what's called a
quite a bit of
site
working out
view,
how we'd
in
use all the
effect, a
material we
passport,
had.
allowing you.
And the third example is also one of those great examples of BBC journalism where we had a reporter and a cameraman follow heroin addicts in the States, and they spent months and months doing this, and they had incredibly good access. And yet, what came back with a TV piece? So we just asked them for all their raw material, and there was tons of it. I mean, it took someone, I would say, 3 days just to watch all the footage and kind of select the bits. And this is, I'll just show you, but it's really harrowing. So I'll just show you a bit of what we came up with for mobile. And this was, we made a version for Facebook as well, and it was very successful.
I'm addicted to heroin.
Oh my goodness! I'm just going to stop that. And I think one of the interesting things of that piece is that actually the web piece we did was 15 minutes long. This is probably 3 minutes. We did a completely different version for the web, which we rarely do, separate mobile and web. And the web version was a proper documentary, really. It was followed the lives of three or four people, their rehab and all this. This was just kind of one part of that story. So we launched this Videos of the Day, the vertical video, at the end of November last year. And we've learned a ton of things, and we're still learning as we go along. But I think the most interesting things for me is that, your starting point always has to be, what's the point of this video? Video, even with the best tools in the world, takes a long time to make and do properly. So actually, you're embarking on something that's very time-consuming and quite expensive. Why are you doing it? Who's it for? Like, who is your audience for that video? And that, for me, is just a key question, because we sometimes get it so wrong. And the last thing, which I think everyone else has also mentioned, is never stop experimenting, never stand still. You think you've nailed it, you've got a fantastic piece. Actually, next time, do it differently. And we're up for a Webby, so vote for us. Thank you.
All right, so I was planning on having this whole discussion here based on these 4 different themes that I had identified that I wanted to go through, but then I also made a promise that we would finish on time. And we've had some technical difficulties, so I want to make sure all of you guys get a chance to ask your questions. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. So does anybody have any questions for the panelists here? We've got one in the front. Do we have any microphones? Here we go. And while that's arriving, thank you guys very much for all those presentations.
Hi, I just wanted to quickly ask Natalie, do you completely separate between mobile and social video, and if so, why? Because aren't we consuming it generally in exactly the same way?
Thank you. A lot of the video we make for mobile, we also make for social. We don't always make the same ones. What we try to do is we identify the stories we want to do, and then we work out which platforms we're going to put them on and whether we make them in square, vertical, or 16:9. So we tend to have, at the moment, it's one team doing all three versions. You're right, it is, but it is largely the same, and everything is being consumed on mobile, but it's also true that we have quite a big audience to the app, and so we just have to think of that audience as one thing, and then the social audience might be different.
I just hop in there. One of last year, actually, at this conference, we had Holden Frith from The Week, and he was talking about their video strategy and how they differentiate between mobile and social. And he said that what they found was that the videos that they made specifically for social audiences were sort of backwards compatible. They worked quite well in the app, but the format of the videos that they were making for the app really weren't very shareable, and they actually kind of fell flat when they cross-posted them to Facebook. And so the format that they were doing in the app is a daily news briefing. It's called The Weekday, and it was the top 3 headlines you need to know this morning and this afternoon, so it was twice daily. And those don't really speak to what is traditionally shareable on Facebook, talking about identity and eliciting some kind of emotional response with the video. And so, yeah, I thought that was an interesting finding, that you can go from social to mobile, but going from mobile, app-specific video to social doesn't always work out.
Also, for Natalie, I have one organizational question, because we're from Deutsche Welle, and we're also now experimenting with web video and stuff like that. How is it? Do you have a web video team, or and how big is it if you have one, or is every single kind of, if you have, I don't know, international news or whatever, are they also expected to have their own web video units?
So the BBC web video actually gets made in an awful lot of places, and sometimes it's quite hard to work out where it's happening. But there was a team in the newsroom making video. When we set up the videos of the day, we set up a separate team, which was always going to be a temporary thing, but we wanted them to have the freedom and the space to be able to experiment and not be tied to the main newsroom. So they were in the newsroom, and they could ask for stuff, but they were actually a separate team, and they were kind of very focused, and they knew what their mission was. It's now being integrated into the main video team.
Actually, I'd like to spread that to the rest of the panelists, because team structure was one of those 4 things that I wanted to touch on. So could you guys give a very quick kind of overview of what the video team structure looks like?
Well, both at the Wall Street Journal and IBT, it was very siloed. So, the video team is on its own. Actually, our video team actually wrote a lot of stories, but the actual notion of somebody from the rest of the newsroom taking on a video and putting it together, where we met the most resistance, surprisingly, was from the video team itself rather than people in the newsroom. The people in the newsroom wanted to learn these new skills and to, do quick social or mobile video, whatever you want to call it, quite quickly. The video team, I think they felt, we control this, standards are going to drop. What does this mean for us? And we were saying, well, if you can turn around a quick social video very quickly in 20 or 30 minutes, that allows you perhaps to devote your energies to something that's a little bit more in-depth, a little bit more intricate, that does need a bit of work on another tool. So, I stand by what I said there earlier. I think in 4 or 5 years' times, most digital newsrooms, if you're coming into it, you will need to have some video editing skills as well as writing skills.
I can tell you how I would ideally structure it, because we're a work in progress. So I would first of all get rid of social media editors, and I would call them just platform editors, and make sure that everybody can do a little bit of everything. So, if someone goes away, someone could come in and deputize really quickly. So I'd have your platforms team, I'd have a content team, and I'd have a development team. And get rid of managers, basically, and just create more kind of horizontal structures within this. So you're going to have a team that knows how to make stories, and something that comes up a lot is everybody's talking about VR, right? And they're thinking about, oh, we've got VR, we've got to do a story. And that's the wrong way to think about it. It should be, I've got this story, it's going to suit it for VR. And so if you've got people who are specialists in making content, and, in the panel that was here earlier in the morning, that's exactly what they were talking about. If you've got somebody who's a 40-year veteran of the news industry, they don't need to know digital. They're coming out with a different expertise. So don't lose that expertise. Keep them in your content team, and then let your formats team, your development team, which would include your analytics person, your audience engagement person, and this is what's going to make everything travel a lot wider. So that's how I would ideally structure it. And I'm wearing ruby slippers, and I'm going to click my heels 3 times right now.
We have a central visual desk based in Rome. There are 30 people about, and they are professional video producers and journalists, and they produce about 150 videos per day. And then we have our local teams. We have 13 local newspapers all over Italy, and in every newspaper there are some journalists who became video makers and video producers, and they are about 80 people spread over all the newsrooms. And in the last 18 months, they produced more than 5,000 videos.
Those were great questions. Thank you, guys. Do we have any other questions in the audience? Right in the back there.
Hello, my name's Tara Mulholland. I work for CNN. I was wondering if you have any experience in dealing with live video and streaming and trying to make that less TV-ish, because particularly with Facebook Lives, it seems like a lot of outlets revert even more severely to the traditions of TV broadcasting, like having presenters, having interviewees, sitting down, being quite static. So what are your thoughts on making news live output for digital consumption?
Was that for anybody in particular, or would you like the whole panel to answer?
Whoever has the most experience or willingness to talk about it.
I can jump in first. Yeah, we at IBT, we've done about 60 Facebook Lives over the last year, and a lot of the early ones that we did was like a TV debate where we'd have that in a room, and it didn't work. One of our most popular Facebook Lives was actually, there was a fire in Docklands, and we're based in Canary Wharf, and we literally just pointed the camera at the fire, and people were just going, wow, look at this huge kind of thing. But it was actually, there was people in trouble, there was actually breaking news going on. One of our biggest, I mean, you know, the example that I showed, you did have somebody who was hosting it, and I think that was needed for that, because that was in the middle of a kind of a massive breaking news situation. But I'd also counter that, you know, a lot of the things that we were doing is what a normal TV cameraman wouldn't be able to do, you know, doing quick vok pops, spinning around. And it is handheld and it's jerky, and that's fine. I don't think people mind that at all. So, yeah, you know, we're still in an experimental phase with it, but, you know, certainly sitting around kind of a studio kind of interviewing people, that's something that we've very much moved away from.
So, I mean, I think everyone's still very much experimenting with live, and I see what you mean. There's a lot of things that feel like TV, and I think if reporters feel, you know, very happy if you ask them to do lives, because it just feels so natural for them, because it is like TV. But then I think if you compare that to Snapchat Stories, for example, what people have been doing there, which is, you know, kind of an almost, it's a like live experience, it's very different, and I just wonder whether things might kind of veer more towards that end of storytelling, which is, you know, much more native and just feels quite different to TV.
I just want to add one more thing to this. So I think a lot of people have kind of had, they've been tempted and they've bitten the Facebook apple when it comes to lives, and they've seen these huge numbers and they kind of get distracted by it. But actually, The Independent did this report about 2 weeks ago saying that YouTube is the world's second biggest web property. So in terms of video, it's still bigger than Facebook. And what's very interesting, when you have a look at networks that carry a live stream on their YouTube channel, people are exhibiting exactly TV behavior. So they're coming in and they're tuning in. And something that I know YouTube is starting in the US is a subscription service for, I think, $35 a month. They're basically trying to take some of this cable traffic and now just stick it on social video. And so the experience that we've had doing social video, it's let's try not to make it look like TV, but actually you see these big organizations taking TV and just sticking it where their audience is.
one simple thing to do with Facebook Live is to interact with the readers, with the thread of comments, and we try to do that, and it's something different from TV.
We've got one more question here. This will be the second to last question.
So none of you have spoken about the pressures to monetize this.
Thank you.
Is there a monetization pressure, and what kind of pressure? Is it specific to your team? Is it global? Like obviously Gruppo L'Espresso has a different format from John Crawley's people. So how does it work? Or is there any pressure at all?
Start here and work our way down.
Obviously, we have pressures, and in the first quarter of 2017, we had 40 million streaming per month, and we had that was 14% more than last year. So our administration team, our advertising team was happy, and this is the easiest way to make money. Our impressions, our streaming and pre-rolls. But now we're trying to find new ways with social videos, and I think that Facebook is going to do something new about it.
I'm not massively qualified to talk about monetization because we're in a very privileged position, but we are commercial outside the UK, and so for example with the vertical videos we have been talking to commercial partners as to how we put ads in it without making the kind of bogging down the experience in the ad. So maybe it's not pre-roll, it's something else, but we have been working on that. But our pressures are very different to those of another organisation, really.
Yeah, basically same, but different. So I worked for Al Jazeera, BBC, Deutsche Welle. They've always been publicly funded or funded by Qatari government, so no pressure to do that. YouTube does have a revenue share, which is I think 50-50, and a lot of people have been putting pressure onto Facebook to come up with something similar.
Yes, obviously, for us being a commercial organisation, we want to increase our reach. As I said, we've got a newsroom of 50, which a lot of news organisations would love, but it's not as big as some of the organisations I've worked for, other people on this panel. I think Facebook can do a lot more, clearly do a lot more. I think they can give us more analytics and more data. I know they do kind of 10-second views and kind of stuff, but I think it's really broad brush. And, it's interesting, they're asking for news organisations' help on kind of fake news, kind of let's work together on that, let's, do more. And we're kind of, well, is that our problem or is that Facebook's problem? And you're asking us, well, monetization is our problem right now here in Centre, and I think Facebook can do a lot more, particularly on their, I guess this is their premier product, this is the thing that's being pushed out at the moment to help us. And certainly for an outlet that's a startup moving into a SME phase, we find it a lot harder to talk to Facebook and get feedback than the big organizations. So, there's tens of thousands of publishers out there. There's even more kind of Facebook Lives being done, but there's a lot more work that they can do for sure to help us out.
I heard Facebook's around here somewhere. You might be able to get a chat.
Yeah, maybe.
I think we're going to have to call it there. Thank you guys all very much. John, Ezra, Natalie, Andrea. Thank you all for your contributions and your presentations.
found
adds the jump afterward, which is a simple skill, but it adds to bonus.
Normally, the separations between first and second place could be 3/10 or 5/10, and she goes out and wins by 1 or 2 points. This is a tumbling pass that you would see on the floor, and she does it on 4 inches wide.
It's also the hardest dismount in the world, and I'm the only one that does it.
I would say it's probably no more than 3 days that it takes her to achieve a new skill. Many athletes, it takes them years.
I would say Simone is definitely competing against herself at this point. Nobody has even been able to come close to her.
Okay, so had anybody seen that before? Yeah, okay, so there were 57 million views of this video on the New York Times Facebook page. They published this before the Olympics, they repeated again during the Olympics, and it's had a ridiculous number of shares, something like 54,000 shares. And the reason that I wanted to start off with this video is, first of all, you'll notice it's from the New York Times. So the New York Times is not a broadcaster, it's a newspaper. But what they seem to have done quite well is very carefully selected digital projects with beautiful execution. Now, this video kind of breaks all the rules that those of us who work in digital and as broadcasters know about the industry. We've been told that things should be square, so 4x4, 60 to 90 seconds long, according to NewsWhip. This video is, as you can see, 16 by 9. They don't have cookie cutter templates across any of the text, and you have to engage with the sound, and people did engage with the sound. And I wanted to show that kind of as an introduction to what I'm going to be talking about. And so if you'd like to follow along with this presentation, it's available on SlideShare. If you just Google my name on SlideShare and 10 things I learned about social video, this is it. And we have a little child on stage, which is great too. So yeah. Actually, this is my presentation right here. So, okay, so some of you might have seen various iterations of this. Before I joined Deutsche Welle about 5-6 months ago, I was at the BBC and I was at Al Jazeera before that. I've been working in the digital space for probably about 7 years in broadcast and another few years before that in international landscape. I originally did this talk at Google Newsgeist last year, and then since then, many people have asked for it. So I just want to kind of whiz through these slides very quickly and tell you the things that my team, when I was at the BBC, we learned about social video, but I think they're still true today. So again, this is not a talk about best practice, so I'm not going to tell you that your videos should be a certain format, but what it is a talk about are digital people who are working in the digital world and a little bit frustrated because traditional people are not really necessarily listening to them. And if anybody can understand this reference, I'll buy you an espresso or something like that. No? Nobody gets it? One person gets it. Okay, good. Okay, so these are some of the people who I talked to when I was originally putting this presentation.
Sorry, Ezra. I want to get your title right. So your title just says Deutsche Welle. Can you remind us what your title is? Ezra. So this is the senior editor for digital at Deutsche Welle. She's got some really cool stuff to show you guys, so come on up.
That's all right. That's okay. Hi, everybody. I just want to start off with a video that some of you guys may or may not have seen. So let's take a look.
At this point in time, nobody can beat Simone Biles. I've seen some of my guy friends try it, but they never land it, so they get really upset.
Simone doesn't require a lot of run into her tumbling skills, so she can fit a longer pass onto the floor than a lot of athletes.
Open?
Yeah. When you don't want to speak. Ah, right, okay.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for your patience and us getting all set up and getting the technical difficulties sorted. So just so you make sure you're at the right panel, this one is called Can We All Just Agree to Stop Doing Television for the Internet? How about now? We're at the panel, which is called Can We All Agree to Stop Doing Television for the Internet? We have a really interesting collection of people here to give their takes on that. The format is going to be each one of them is going to come up and do a little bit of a talk about how they're experiencing that for about 10 minutes, and then we'll open it up to questions. So first up is Ezra Dogramasi.